Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom Road Reaction Postgame Show. I am James Ham. Joining me, Mr. Rui Thomas, which we will get to in a second. But the Sacramento Kings lay a huge egg. They fall apart. They lose to the Detroit Pistons 114-95. This was about as bad as it gets. The Sacramento Kings absolutely quit in this game. There are players that quit in this game. We're going to get to that soon. Mr. Rui Thomas, what are your initial thoughts on this basketball game that we were forced to watch?
Well, the Kings and Pistons came out competitive. We saw, great defensive efforts by both teams in the first quarter when they both shot 37%, and we saw Jason Thompson return to the starting lineup and shut down Monroe. He had 7 points and 5 rebounds and 3 blocks in 8 minutes in the first quarter. But then once we got to the second quarter, everything fell apart. Michael Malone used to emphasize how the Kings need to play 48 minutes of basketball, and we can definitely take 12 minutes out of the equation because in that second quarter, the Kings just completely collapsed. They allowed the Pistons to shoot 5 of 11 from behind the arc. The Pistons, they were running early, but they didn't have to because the Kings' defense, altogether was just atrocious. Allowed the Pistons to shoot over 50% in the second half, and there just wasn't much fight in the Kings tonight. I believe I saw one dive for a loose ball, lots of bad shots. The Kings just mailed it in tonight.
Yeah, mailing it in is a good way to put it. I mean, there are a lot of things we can talk about in this game as far as, first of all, the Pistons aren't as bad as their record would indicate. They picked up their 10th win tonight. 2 of those do come against the Sacramento Kings. So the Kings don't have to play the Pistons again, but the Pistons are 5-0 and they're averaging, I think coming into tonight, they were averaging 107 points a game over their last 4 after waiving Josh Smith. Like, the weight of the world has been lifted off this team. So, I mean, they are playing well. And so the Kings came in, they had a good first quarter, like you said. The second quarter, they just stopped playing defense on the perimeter completely. I mean, watching Jason Thompson and even DeMarcus Cousins in the first half play defense, they were holding their own and doing everything they could, but then all of a sudden, you just like wide open shot after shot after shot, and not only wide open, but like literally there were plays where no one was guarding somebody. Like, there were people that didn't even have somebody guarding them. And I'm going to say this. I respect Tyrone Corbin. I think Tyrone Corbin is a very good guy. I think Tyrone Corbin made one huge mistake, and that came about, it's almost 3 weeks ago now, right? When he said yes, that he would coach his team. This thing is an absolute disaster at this point. And there's no one that you can take off the hook here. I mean, Rudy Gay had a horrendous game. I mean, he finishes 5 of 16 from the field. He doesn't score at all in the fourth quarter. He goes 0 for 4 in the fourth quarter. There's something going on between him and DeMarcus Cousins. You can see it clearly. Neither one of them has each other's back. We watched it in the previous game where DeMarcus Cousins just stood there with his hands on his knees while Rudy Gay started doing his heroic plays down the stretch and turning balls over, where he had 8 turnovers in the previous game. But tonight, I'm going to put so much of this on DeMarcus Cousins. And, for that matter, I'm not even going to put it on DeMarcus Cousins. Here's who I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put it on Tyrone Corbin, because he's the one who allowed DeMarcus Cousins to do what he did tonight. If you're going to let DeMarcus Cousins walk up and down the court the entire game, the fourth quarter, just so you know, Cousins played 12 minutes. He played the entire fourth quarter. He didn't get to the three-point line on his offensive end until 16 seconds were left in the shot clock every single time. He didn't go into the post but like once. He didn't even try. And to me, I get that he's frustrated, and I get that he wants to quit here, but that's a coaching decision. You let him stay out there. And the front office of this team has created a quagmire. They have created one of the biggest messes I've ever seen. I don't know if DeMarcus Cousins has requested a trade, but it sure does look like that's where this thing is heading. And they have this whole PR thing that they're doing this week. It better come with a new head coach, because this thing is out of control and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And DeMarcus Cousins, if he wants to be an all-star, he needs to pull his head out and stop doing what he's doing, because what we saw tonight was shameful. He didn't help his guards at all. I mean, they give up, like, I don't know, Brandon Jennings, what he scored, 35 points. He didn't. DeMarcus Cousins refused to show on the pick and roll. He just let his guard get picked, and then he kind of took a few steps back to get the guy who set the screen, while the guards ran right to the basket. And when they didn't run right to the basket, it was because there was someone wide open on the wing that they could hit for a 3-pointer. This was an embarrassment. It's the worst that it's ever been in the last 2 years that I can see. I mean, there's been dark times in Sacramento, but having a team quit, which is what we saw tonight, it hasn't got that bad. I mean, even Paul Westphal didn't have players quit on him. Keith Smart didn't have players quit on him. This was a team that quit completely on a coach, on a fan base, on an ownership group. You quit on everybody. I don't care if there was 12,000 people in Detroit watching this game. The fact is, 12,000 people, that means nothing. There was a television audience out there. I don't know if DeMarcus Cousins got this by the fact that everyone posted that video of him standing around in the previous game, but there is nowhere to hide in the NBA. Everyone's got season pass. Everyone watches these games. They know how bad you look when you just cash it in and walk up and down the court. And tonight was just a complete and utter embarrassment. City of Sacramento should be embarrassed that they just had to watch their team do that in another city.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you mentioned those previous coaches. That's where Tyrone Corbin is failing immensely right now, allowing DeMarcus Cousins to get away with, his lazy antics because, Westphal and Keith Smart both held Cousins accountable, and that's why they clashed so often, but it was necessary to keep him in check. I mean, Cousins, as the best player on this team, he has to lead by example, and him loafing around and playing under the screens, leaving his guards out to dry on defense is inexcusable. And, yeah, you mentioned that Vine, right, that went viral from the other night. It was like this. I mean, you could put the whole game up on YouTube if you want to show Cousins, not giving his best. You mentioned, his All-Star eligibility might be at stake. He puts up great numbers, but, again, numbers don't tell the whole story. And, yeah, his effort tonight, very questionable. And you mentioned the possible rift between Rudy Gay and DeMarcus Cousins. We don't see them moving the ball between each other that often. But,
Not
yeah,
at
I
all.
mean, no. So, yeah, I don't know. This is spiraling down the drain. Corbin has to do something, or this is going to get out of control.
Yeah, I think it's already got out of control. This was a 4-game road trip where you easily could have won all 4, and the Kings go 1-3. I don't see how this thing is going to get any better. I mean, Cousins tonight, he finishes with 18 points, 15 rebounds, 4 assists, but he even stopped going in the post. I mean, I think he had all 11 of his free throw attempts in the first half when he couldn't buy a bucket. He finishes 5 of 17 from the field. But to me, it's like, look, this game, you know what this really it looked like to me? DeMarcus Cousins pointing at the front office from Detroit, 2,000 miles away, and saying, you want pace? I'll show you pace. I'm going to show you how slowly I can walk up the floor. That is what this is. This was a statement. I mean, how else can you take it when he literally didn't even try? So I don't know where you go from here. A lot of other players had bad games in this game. Again, Rudy finishes 5 of 16, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Darren Collison got lit up on the defensive end by Brandon Jennings, but again, I don't blame a lot of that on him. You let Jennings get hot, and he just kept going nuts. Ben McLemore goes 2 of 11 from the field. He had a very, very bad game. Ray McCallum played well. He scores 10 points off the bench. But again, he's part of the group that got killed by Jennings. Derek Williams comes off the bench, goes 5 of 9 from the field, and scores 12 points. Darren Collison is the one guy who really looked like he had some fight in him. And, for that matter, Jason Thompson, we talked about this a little bit before we went on the air. Jason Thompson in that first quarter was just a star. I mean, 7 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 blocks. He absolutely stymied Greg Monroe. And then he goes to the bench, and it's like Tyrone Corbin forgot about him. I mean, he doesn't play at all in the fourth quarter. When you walked into the fourth quarter down 6, and you should have been down 3 going to the fourth quarter. I mean, Brandon Jennings hit a 3-ball to push it to 6 right before the fourth quarter started. And then to just get absolutely trampled in the fourth quarter to score 17 points, go 5 of 15 from the field. I mean, this isn't even trying. It's not even fun to watch for anybody. And, I think people who are watching at home, they want their money back. They wish they were watching football. And that's not a good thing. So, all right, let's get to our three keys to the game. We've got, a couple of things that actually did work and a couple of things that didn't tonight. Addition by subtraction. We talked a little bit about this already, that since Josh Smith has been gone, that the Detroit Pistons are a much, much, much better team. Rui, why don't you dig into that a little bit?
Oh yeah. Well, when you look at the Pistons roster, they've definitely assembled, a team with a lot of talent. Maybe some questionable decision makers, which include Smith. But yeah, since Smith was waived, the Pistons have found new life. They're 4-0, they were beating teams by an average of 18 points coming into tonight, and they were shooting over 40% from deep. Tonight they shoot 12 of 31 for 38.7%. So, they can make threes when they're given opportunities like the Kings gave them. And, they're playing like a team right now, which the Kings used to do earlier in the season. Drummond, impossible to move in the paint. He gave Cousins trouble early in this game. And we saw Monroe start to get things together after Thompson, stuffed him for 3 blocks earlier in the first quarter. Yeah, Jennings just amazing night tonight. He's been struggling mightily this season, but yeah, I mean that was. They also have a pretty good coach in Stan Van Gundy, which is or an established coach, which is something the Kings don't have right now.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what Stan Van Gundy's done, he told them, look, you've got to get rid of Josh Smith. You've got to bite the cost and get rid of him. Now, you got to blame Stan Van Gundy that Josh Smith was still on that roster, because realistically, the only reason why Josh Smith wasn't traded to the Sacramento Kings earlier this season was because Stan Van Gundy wanted to give him a shot to try to redeem himself in Detroit. So, basically, Stan Van Gundy just cost his franchise like $26 million, which is a lot of money by anyone's standard. So, yeah, the Josh Smith addition by subtraction is clear at this point. It doesn't matter that, the guy that you have start in his place, Kyle Singler, scores 3 points on 1 of 7 shooting. It just doesn't matter. You're a better team without him. They got no production at all out of the small forward position. And that's better than what you had before with Josh Smith, except for when they played the Kings, where Josh Smith looked like an all-star again. All right, so let's get to our second point, the point guard duel. The point guard duel didn't go so well. Brandon Jennings, in 31 minutes of action, goes 14 of 21 from the field, 5 of 8 from behind the arc. He runs a plus 12. He has 35 points, 7 assists, 2 steals, only turned the ball over twice. He absolutely murdered the Kings, and he just kept doing it. Even late in the game, it was like, hey, I'm just still going to light you guys up. So I think it doesn't matter what Darren Collison does at this point. Collison did have 17 points, three assists, 6 rebounds. He also had 3 steals himself. He had a decent game. Again, Ray McCallum had 10 points off the bench, so you got 27 points out of Collison and McCallum combined, but you still got outscored by a ton. That was an embarrassing thing to watch, and of course, I don't know. Rui, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, we know Collison is professional because he showed a lot of heart in this game. He only had 2 points going into the half, but when Kyle Singler fouled him on the 3-point attempt entering the third quarter, that really got him going. He scored, I believe, like 11 points or 9 points in the first 3 minutes of the third, and finishes with his 17 and adds 3 steals and 6 assists. But yeah, when Jennings, we're not really sure what to make of Jennings at this point. There was a time when he came into the NBA the same year as Tyreke Evans and Stephen Curry. He was in their same league, but he hasn't shot over 30%. And I believe this is his 3rd season. He's shooting under 40% from the floor. And yeah, tonight he goes 14 of 21, 35 points, throws in 7 assists. His shot selection has always been questionable. He pulls up for some very strange looks, but tonight they were going, and a lot of them came at Collison's expense. Also, Ray McCallum's.
Yeah, it was ugly. It was ugly. All right, so let's get to our last point, which is running wild. And the Detroit Pistons did post 20 fast break points against the Kings. The Kings only 14. It's a big number, but it's not like a horrendous number. But the Kings allowed the Pistons to shoot 49%, 49.5% from the field. They allowed them to shoot just a killer 3-point percentage as well. Yeah, the Pistons finished 12 of 31, 38.7%. The Kings have a giant red like bullseye on their chest once again as the team that can't guard the 3-point line, which they've had the previous 2 years. And now teams are just starting to light it up against the Kings. And again, the Kings struggled tonight. They only had 3 of 15 threes themselves. But the Kings have to decide to guard somebody on the post. I mean, on the perimeter, and that's it. I mean, they just fell asleep at the wheel. There's no excuse for what we saw tonight, especially. Maybe Ben McLemore is a little distracted. I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway here. His younger brother was in a car accident with his basketball team yesterday, and they had a rollover, but his brother's okay, and everyone else was okay, I guess, but still a scary time. And I don't know if Ben was up late dealing with this, but he is a young guy, and his brother and him are very, very, very close. So maybe he's a bit distracted, but 2 of 11, 0 of 6 from behind the arc. Just not a great night, and the defensive effort from a guy who usually does some pretty good things on the defensive end was pretty lackluster. Do you have anything else on the running wild category, Rui?
Oh yeah, James. The Pistons. It was an area of concern because the Pistons scored 31 fast break points against the Kings last time out. Um, you know, we're learning, right? There is a multitude of ways to defeat the Kings, and running on the Kings in addition to shooting threes are two great starts. But tonight they record only 20 fast break points, which is a lot, but it wasn't something they had to rely on because the half court defense with the Kings was so atrocious. We
Porous,
can.
yeah.
I mean, Contavious Caldwell Pope, another player who's shooting under 40% this season. He goes 4 of 9, shoots 44% for 9 points tonight. And then Jody Meeks absolutely worked Nick Stauskas when the second units are going at each other. He goes 5 of 12, 13 points. So you don't have to run, right? If you can beat Kings the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, and the post. And I remember specifically there was a play where Jody Meeks buried a wide open three against Stauskas where he slacked off him. Then the next play, Meeks ran right by Stauskas and went right to the basket. Of course, there was no help defense. So what are you going to say? Stauskas got beat. No one was there to help him. He gave up the baseline wide open. That's what happens. All right, so let's go to our MVPs for tonight's game. I mean, for me, there's no one that could win the MVP in this game except for Brandon Jennings. 35 points, 7 assists. We've beat him like a dead horse in this road reaction. He just killed the Kings, and I think he's still probably hitting 3-pointers somewhere. Just lighting it up and laughing because that's how he rolls. But an embarrassment to watch what Brandon Jennings did to this team. Who do you got for your MVP?
I'm going to go with Jennings as well. He's a very entertaining player. I think everyone can give him credit for that. And he played very good defense on Carlson in the first half. You know, he has a knack for taking the off-balance jumper, and when it's not going in, you want to rip your hair out. But when it's going in tonight, you can only just if you're a fan of the Kings, you can only shake your head and watch it off.
Yeah, he's like a poor man's Jason Williams, right? So I mean that's kind of what I look at him. He's got a lot of flavor to his game. He likes to, he's like an and one mixtape a lot of time, dribbling crazy and putting on a show. I know at one point he was playing along to one of the songs on the PA system. He was kind of like flicking his feet up in the air while he was dribbling around. So um, I I don't know if I'm the Sacramento Kings, I wouldn't be entertained watching him drop 35 on me, especially a guy who, like you said, he's a career 39% shooter. Uh, who doesn't get to have a career night against the Sacramento Kings this season? Well, overall, I mean that's a typical thing. The guys have career nights against the Sacramento Kings, but come on now. This is just gone like to hell on a handbasket, and it's gone very quickly. Rui, do you have anything else to add tonight?
James, this road trip is thankfully over. Darren Carlson made it a point before they won this trip that this would be a good time for the team to bond. And after this debacle, I'm not sure what's going to come out of it on the other end. We'll have to see later this week.
Maybe he said bomb, not bond. Maybe that's what he said. I'm not sure because they bombed. So a couple of things. The Kings are back at Sleep Train Arena starting on Wednesday night. They have a 6-game homestand starring the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 1 with, I think, all their horses are healthy, which is not good for the Sacramento Kings. They never fare well against the Oklahoma City Thunder, even when they are at half strength or quarter strength or 1/8 strength. So to watch them come in with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook healthy and ready to roll should not be a pleasant thing on Wednesday. Who knows? There's a couple of days here before Wednesday. There's all kinds of things that could happen between now and then. But I do know that we're supposed to hear a little bit from Pete D'Alessandro. He will be on the Carmichael Dave show from 8 to 9 tomorrow morning, but also the conventional media will also get a kick at him this week. So you will get something from us with regards to Pete D'Alessandro. Vivek Ranadive is also supposed to talk to the media at some point this week from what I hear. So we may have some more stuff there. I'm not convinced that a new head coach won't be brought in before this week is out. That's just my own personal view. This has gone way, way, way off the rails, and it's very unfortunate. And before we leave this podcast tonight, this Road Reaction post-game show, I just want to give a sad shout-out to Stuart Scott, ESPN, Stuart Scott, who passed away this morning at the age of 49 after a really, really courageous 7-year battle with cancer on and off. One of the greats in the industry, a guy that I always took to. I loved his catchphrases. I loved Booyah, cooler than the other side of the pillow. These are things that you just can't replace. He was a gem, and very, very sad day for the entire sports world to lose Stuart Scott. So for Mr. Rui Thomas, I am James Ham. Thank you for tuning in for the Cowbell Kingdom Road Reaction postgame show. We will not be back for a while because we've got a homestand, but when we do, we'll have more to say, I'm sure. So thanks for tuning in tonight.